Disclaimer: every image in this archive has passed rigorous authenticity checks at the Department of Antiquities. We cannot be held responsible for the cognitive shift you are about to experience. This footage contains realities that contradict official history. Your perception of the world is about to change forever. Watch at your own risk.
In the winter of 2019, a contractor's sledgehammer broke through the false wall of a basement in Bloomsbury. What emerged from the plaster dust was not a forgotten storage cupboard or a bricked-up coal chute. It was a door. Not a service entrance, not a utilitarian hatch for tradesmen. A formal doorway, 7 feet tall, proportioned according to classical Georgian design. The kind of entrance you build when you expect to be seen, when you expect to be judged by what you present to the street. But this door sits 8 feet below the current pavement. Above it, what the residents of this house had always assumed to be a ground floor window reveals itself as something else entirely. It was never a ground floor window. It was second story. The door beneath it was the true entrance, the original entrance, built for a world that no longer exists. The granite pediment is carved with acanthus leaves. The threshold is worn smooth in the center, beveled by decades of foot traffic. This was not decorative. This was functional. This was used. And then it was buried. This is not an isolated discovery. In St. Petersburg, excavations reveal entire ground floors with 14-foot ceilings, frescoed walls, parquet flooring, now used for storage, for boxes, for the detritus of lives lived above them. These rooms were not designed as basements. The proportions are wrong. The craftsmanship is wrong. They were designed as the world. In Seattle's Pioneer Square, purple glass skylights are embedded in the modern sidewalks. They illuminate the storefronts below, shops with painted signs still visible, hotels with furniture still in place, a city beneath the city. We are told this is the Seattle Underground, a tourist attraction, a historical oddity. We are not told why it was buried. No one remembers when this happened. No plaques, no monuments to commemorate the great street razing. City archives are strangely silent about an engineering project that would have required moving millions of tons of earth. We are told it was gradual, utilitarian, unremarkable. But the architecture screams otherwise. 14-foot ceilings are not unremarkable. Granite door frames with hand-carved rosettes are not utilitarian. Frescoed plaster is not gradual accretion. These details cost money, they cost time, they cost the labor of master craftsmen who do not waste their skill on spaces designed to be hidden. So why are they hidden now? Walk through any 19th century city, London, Paris, Moscow, Chicago, Melbourne. Look down. Look at the buildings with basement windows at street level. Windows that are too tall, too ornate, too precisely proportioned to be basements. Look at the doors that descend, the staircases that go down to reach the main halls. Ask yourself, would you build a palace basement? Would you carve marble just to bury it? Would you install chandeliers where only rats would see them? Or were these rooms designed to be seen, to be used, to be lived in, before someone decided they had to be forgotten? This is not ancient history. This is not Rome. This is not Pompeii. This happened within living memory of our great-great-grandparents, within the age of photography, within the age of newspapers and municipal records and civic accountability. And yet, we do not remember. There is a term for this: cultural amnesia, the collective forgetting of an event so large, so disruptive, so impossible to ignore that its absence from our memory becomes the evidence itself. What if the ground level wasn't raised? What if it was buried? And what if this happened everywhere, all at once, within living memory of people who were told never to speak of it again?
From Omsk to Omaha, the same architectural signature appears. Red brick, Romanesque arches, limestone keystones, ground floor ceilings measuring 12 to 15 feet. Not influenced by European style, but identical in execution. Buildings constructed with such precision that modern engineers struggle to replicate the mortar composition. Proponents of the theory call it the Tartar Gothic, a global architecture that shouldn't exist because the cities it appears in had no connection to one another. In Paris, metro excavations expose entire Haussmann-era shopfronts below the modern tunnels. The basement level has decorated plaster ceilings, ceiling decoration, in a basement. It creates an eerie feeling that perhaps these weren't always basements. Prague's Old Town Square, ground-penetrating radar shows structures extending 20 feet below the acknowledged foundation depth. Structures that appear on no historical building survey. Rooms that exist but are not supposed to. In Vladivostok, the basements feature ballroom-height ceilings with intact chandelier mounts. One might wonder, why install a chandelier mount in a basement? Why design a room for dancing, for gathering, for being seen, and then bury it beneath the earth? Harbin's Russian architecture was supposedly built on raised foundations due to flooding risk, and yet the ornate entryways are now accessible only through manholes, through grates in the sidewalk. You descend a ladder to reach a doorway that was clearly designed for a horizontal approach, for carriages, for people walking at street level. The geometry doesn't make sense. Seattle's downtown core tells perhaps the most documented version of this story. Between 1889 and 1907, the entire district was raised by 12 feet. The official explanation, sewage management. But the old ground floors weren't demolished. They were simply buried, sealed. Tourists now walk on glass skylights, peering down at what was once street level. At barbershops with mirrors still mounted on the walls. At hotels with brass fixtures still in place. It feels less like an engineering project and more like a burial. In Melbourne, the subterranean arcades weren't built underground. Archival photographs from the 1850s show them at street level, shoppers walking along them in daylight. By 1890, they're basements. The photographs exist. The transition is documented. What isn't documented is why. These cities had no unified government, no shared engineering core, no telegraph network capable of coordinating infrastructure projects on this scale. Yet between roughly 1850 and 1900, they all executed the same solution. They all buried their ground floors. The synchronicity creates a dissonance, a feeling that something is missing from the historical record, some explanation that would make this pattern make sense. Close examination of the buried structures reveals something peculiar. They weren't designed for burial. Exterior walls have decorative elements, cornices, friezes, sculptural details that would never be applied to foundations. You don't carve limestone flowers into a wall that's meant to be underground. You don't install them where no one will see them. The basement windows are full-sized, with interior shutters, with window seats built into the wall cavity. Window seats in a basement, as if someone might sit there to read, to watch the street, to be part of the world outside. But there is no street outside these windows now, only earth. Drainage systems flow upward from the buried floors, engineering madness if intentional. Water flows downhill, it always has. So why would you design a drainage system that fights gravity? Unless the floors were never meant to be below grade. Unless the drainage made perfect sense when these rooms were at street level. The buried floors often have superior craftsmanship to the new ground floors above them. Marble instead of tile, hand-carved molding instead of plaster, hardwood instead of pine. It creates an inverted hierarchy. The hidden floors are more beautiful than the visible ones, as if the best of the building was meant to be forgotten. One researcher plotted these cities on a map. The pattern that emerged is striking. Every major port city, every significant trade hub, every cultural center of the 19th century, all showing the same architectural anomaly, all with buried ground floors, all with records that vaguely mention street improvements but never explain the scale of what was done. The theory asks a simple question. If these were independent municipal projects, why do they look like a coordinated event? Why does it feel less like history and more like a cover-up?
The official explanation is straightforward.
Wealthy homeowners built areaways, recessed courtyards below street level, to provide light and coal delivery access to service basements. It seems reasonable, logical, the kind of answer that satisfies casual curiosity. Until you examine the structures themselves. These aren't service areas. They're finished rooms with oak paneling, with dental molding running along the ceiling edges, with marble fireplace surrounds carved with acanthus leaves and classical motifs. Fireplaces in a coal delivery zone? It creates a strange contradiction. You don't furnish a utilitarian space like a drawing room. You don't install decorative elements where tradesmen will track coal dust. Unless it was never a coal delivery zone at all. Many buried entrances are labeled coal chutes in modern building surveys. The term appears on architectural plans, on historic registries. It provides an answer, and answers are comforting. But the physical evidence tells a different story. The chutes are 6 feet wide, with granite steps descending, far too elaborate for coal delivery. Coal chutes in genuinely period-built basements are crude iron tubes, 12 inches in diameter, functional, ugly, designed to be forgotten. These aren't forgotten. They're showcased. They lead to rooms with finished floors, not coal bins, not storage. Rooms with plaster ceiling medallions, with door hardware made of brass instead of iron, with window glass that's hand-blown, expensive, the kind of glass you install when appearance matters. Many buildings have these chutes on multiple sides, north, south, east, west. No building needs 4 coal deliveries. The geometry doesn't support the explanation, but it does support another possibility, that these were entrances, public entrances, designed for foot traffic from multiple streets. When these structures are excavated, there's no coal residue, no blackening of the stone, no carbon scoring on the walls. Chemical analysis shows limestone and granite surfaces that have never been exposed to coal. They were never used for their supposed purpose. It raises an uncomfortable question. If they weren't coal chutes, what were they? Historians claim builders applied decorative elements to basements for aesthetic completeness, for the satisfaction of creating a unified design, even in spaces no one would see. It's a romantic notion, the artist who carves beauty into darkness simply because it should exist. But examine the economics. A Romanesque archway with carved voussoirs costs 40% more than a plain arch. Limestone keystones were imported from specific quarries, sometimes from hundreds of miles away. Frescoed basement ceilings required master artisans, painters who spent years perfecting their craft, not laborers, not apprentices, masters. Why would 19th century developers operating on narrow profit margins in competitive markets spend thousands of dollars in modern equivalent to ornament spaces no one would see? The answer proponents of the theory suggest is that they wouldn't. These spaces were meant to be seen. They were public-facing when they were built. The ornamentation made economic sense because it attracted customers, tenants, prestige. And then something changed. The fallback explanation is gradual accretion. Streets were raised over decades through natural accumulation, horse manure, construction debris, intentional fill added bit by bit, slowly, imperceptibly, until one day the ground floor was underground. It sounds plausible, but the physical evidence collapses the timeline. The accumulation layer in cities like Seattle shows uniform composition, not the chaotic mix of gradual deposits, but deliberate fill. Clay and sand brought in from elsewhere, laid down in a specific sequence, engineered. Photographic evidence shows some streets raised by 10 feet or more in under 5 years, not generations, not slow accumulation. A single project, completed, final. No city budgets from the period account for the labor costs of such projects. We have meticulous records of street lamp oil purchases, of cobblestone repair contracts, of payments to night soil collectors. But for moving millions of tons of earth? Silence. Vague line items, metropolitan improvements, infrastructure modernization. No names, no contractors, no scandals over cost overruns. For comparison, the Brooklyn Bridge project generated thousands of documents, newspaper articles, political controversies. We know what they ate for lunch on the construction site. We know the names of the workers who died. We know everything. For the street raisings, we know almost nothing. The fill material itself creates questions. Geological surveys show imported clay and sand, not local soil, brought in from quarries and river systems, sometimes 50 miles. The logistics would have been staggering: barge loads, train cars, an endless procession of material flowing into the city. And yet, no records of purchase, no receipts, no supply contracts. It feels less like gradual municipal improvement and more like an event that was completed quickly and then erased from official memory. The theory points to architectural drawings from the period, building plans that show structures designed with ground floor entrances at what is now basement level. Plans dated to the 1860s and 1870s, after the supposed street raising had already occurred. Either the architects were incompetent, designing buildings for a street level that no longer existed, or the street level hadn't changed yet. The plans were correct when drawn, and the burial came later. One final detail creates unease. In cities across the world, the buried level is remarkably consistent, 10 to 15 feet, not 5 feet in one city and 20 in another, not random, uniform, as if someone knew exactly how deep to bury the old world to make us forget it was ever there.
Standard modern basement height, 7 to 8 feet. Utilitarian, designed for storage, for mechanicals, for spaces you visit briefly and leave. Low ceilings save money. Every additional foot of height requires more excavation, more material, deeper foundations, more structural support. Basements are kept low to minimize cost. It's basic construction economics. It's been true for centuries. The buried floors in these 19th century structures, 12 to 16 feet, higher than many modern first floors, higher than luxury apartments built today. In St. Petersburg, the service basements have 14-foot vaulted ceilings. Vaulted, the kind of ceiling that requires skilled masons, that requires mathematical precision, that requires intention. Why would you vault a basement ceiling? Ceiling height is expensive, not just in materials, but in the cascading costs it creates. Taller walls need thicker walls. Deeper excavation hits water tables, requires pumping, requires reinforcement. Every foot adds days to construction, adds labor costs, adds risk. Engineers minimize basement height because the return on investment is zero. No one pays premium rent for a tall basement. No one admires your foundation, so you build it as low as code allows and spend your budget on the visible floors. Yet these basements have ceiling heights that exceed the floors above them. The public rooms are shorter than the buried rooms. The hierarchy is inverted, unless they weren't basements when they were built. Interior staircases preserve the truth. Architecture doesn't lie. You can't rewrite documents. You can alter maps, but you can't easily change a staircase carved from marble. The stone remembers its original purpose. In dozens of buildings across Europe and North America, the main staircase descends from the modern ground floor entrance, not a service stair, the ceremonial staircase, the one with carved newel posts, with mahogany banisters, with stained glass windows at the landing. You enter the building and immediately go downstairs. To reach the primary reception rooms, you descend. Then you climb back up to access the bedrooms. The flow makes no sense, unless the original ground floor is now below current street level, unless what we call the ground floor entrance was cut into the second story, a retrofit, an adaptation to a world that had risen, or to a building that had been buried. The Glessner House in Chicago presents this pattern perfectly. The basement ballroom is accessed by descending a ceremonial staircase. Crystal chandeliers hang in the stairwell, the kind of lighting you install to impress guests, to create atmosphere, to say, this is important. Tour guides explain it as an eccentric design choice, a quirk of the architect, but examine the guest flow.
You arrive, you're led downstairs to the ballroom, then back upstairs for dinner, then down again for after-dinner entertainment. The hosts and guests constantly climbing stairs. It's not eccentric, it's illogical, unless the ballroom was ground level when designed, unless the staircase made perfect sense before the world changed. Window mathematics reveal the same pattern. Count the windows from street level, look at their proportion, their placement, their style. Current ground floor, narrow horizontal windows designed to sit near the ceiling of a room, the kind of windows you install in a basement to let in light from above, from the street. Second floor, tall, ornate windows with balconettes, the kind you step through, the kind you stand at to see and be seen. Entrance-level windows, public-facing windows. Third floor and above, standard residential windows, appropriate to bedrooms, to private spaces. The fenestration tells you the second floor was designed as the public face of the building. The ground floor has windows designed to be below grade, and yet they're now at street level, half buried, letting in light from a world that has risen around them. Photographic evidence from the 1880s and 1890s shows some of these buildings before street-level changes. The windows align correctly, the proportions make sense. Then, in later photographs from the same vantage point, soil has risen, pavement has climbed, the second story has become the ground floor. The transition is documented. What isn't documented is the decision to do it. When buried doorways are excavated, the thresholds tell their story. Wear patterns carved in stone, deep grooves in the center where countless footsteps fell, the kind of wear that takes decades to develop, that requires heavy traffic, daily use, public access. Not service doors, not occasional use. These were main entrances. There's no step down. Basements typically have a step down from ground level, a transition, a signal that you're descending. These thresholds are level, designed for a horizontal approach, for someone walking along a street stepping directly inside. The thresholds align with exterior elements that no longer exist, ghostly connections to vanished infrastructure, paving stones that end abruptly at modern ground level, curb cuts leading to nothing, street-level walkways that terminate in mid-air because the street they connected to is now 15 feet higher. Most telling, the door hardware. Handles positioned at standard height for ground-level approach, knockers mounted where a visitor standing on a street could reach them, not elevated, not lowered, positioned for a world we can no longer access. Many have exterior lanterns, torch brackets, gas lamp fixtures on either side of the door. You don't light a basement entrance with decorative sconces. You don't install brass lanterns where no one will see them. You light a main entrance. You create ambiance. You announce to the street, this is a place of importance. But now, the lanterns sit in darkness, underground, illuminating earth instead of faces. The theory asks, if these were always basements, why do they have every feature of a main entrance? Why do they have the wear patterns of heavy use? Why do they align with vanished streets? And why does no one remember when they were buried? Door frames preserve construction techniques, joinery methods, tool marks, the archaeological record carved in wood and stone. When experts examine these buried doors, they find techniques consistent with ground floor construction, not basement construction. Different standards applied. Basement doors were utilitarian, simple planks, iron hinges, no decoration. Ground floor doors received investment, craftsmanship, details that would be judged by the public. These doors have the craftsmanship of ground floors, the investment of public spaces, the details of entrances meant to impress. They were built to be seen, and now they exist in darkness, forgotten, buried beneath a world that claims they were always below.
Let's examine Seattle's official story as a case study. 90 square blocks raised by an average of 12 feet between 1889 and 1907. 18 years. The claim is documented, accepted, taught in schools. Do the mathematics. 90 blocks, each approximately 300,000 square feet, 27 million square feet total. Multiply by 12 feet of depth, 324 million cubic feet of fill material. Convert to cubic yards, 12 million cubic yards. Convert to weight, approximately 18 million tons. For comparison, the Panama Canal, considered one of history's greatest engineering feats, one of the wonders of the industrial age, it moved 200 million cubic yards over 10 years using industrial machinery, steam shovels, railways, dynamite, thousands of workers, international funding. Seattle allegedly moved 6% of that volume with horse-drawn carts and manual labor in less time, while simultaneously rebuilding the entire city after a catastrophic fire. The logistics are impossible. Where did the dirt come from? Official records mention nearby hills being graded: Denny Hill, Queen Anne Hill, vague gestures toward topographical changes that would provide the necessary material. It sounds reasonable until you check the geographic surveys. Denny Hill wasn't significantly excavated until the 1930s, the Denny Regrade, a massive project that took years, that generated thousands of photographs, that's documented exhaustively. It happened 40 years after the supposed street raising. Not before, after. Soil composition analysis of the fill layer shows material from multiple sources: clay from river deltas, sand from coastal deposits, glacial till from locations 30 to 50 miles away. Not local soil, not material you'd get from grading a nearby hill. Imported material, brought in deliberately. From where? No period maps show the massive quarry operations that would be required. No barge traffic records document the transportation. No railway manifests list the cargo. Water table records show no change consistent with removing millions of tons of earth from the local watershed. The surrounding geography remained stable. The hills remained hills. The valleys remained valleys. The earth simply appeared. Other cities face the same problem. St. Petersburg's street raising would require excavating half the Neva riverbank, millions of cubic meters, a geographic transformation visible from space. It never happened. The riverbank surveys from 1850 and 1900 show identical topography. London's project would demand quarrying the surrounding countryside on a scale that would leave permanent scars, massive pits, deforested slopes, industrial railways to transport material. None of this exists in the historical record. The countryside around London in 1900 looks identical to 1850 in aerial surveys. The Earth had to come from somewhere. Basic physics demands it. You cannot create 18 million tons of fill material from nothing, and yet the source remains unidentified. Census records create another paradox. Chicago, as example. 1870 population, 300,000. Male working-age population, approximately 75,000. Laborers required for the scale of earthworks claimed, 15,000 full-time for 10 or more years. That's 20% of the entire male workforce for a decade, doing nothing but moving dirt. Actual construction jobs recorded in the 1880 census, 3,000 total, including carpenters, masons, glaziers, all trades, not just earth movers. Even accounting for census undercounting, for transient workers not captured in official records, the numbers don't approach what would be needed. These projects would have consumed entire generations of laborers, would have created housing shortages for workers, would have generated strikes, labor disputes, political movements. Where are the union records? These were the decades of labor organization, of strikes that shut down entire industries, the Pullman strike, the Haymarket affair, labor disputes that made national headlines, that changed laws. But for projects employing 20% of the male workforce, silence. No mortality records reflect the scale of work. Earth moving was deadly. Cave-ins, equipment failures, disease from working in wet soil. Large construction projects typically lost 1 to 2% of workers annually. For 15,000 workers over 10 years, we should see 1,500 to 3,000 deaths. The municipal death records show nothing unusual. No spike in construction fatalities, no mass graves for laborers, no memorials to the workers who died building the modern city. It's as if the work never happened. Immigration records show no waves of workers recruited specifically for these projects.
The Panama Canal drew workers from across the Caribbean, from Europe, from Asia, tens of thousands. Their arrival is documented in ship manifests, in immigration records, in newspaper accounts of crowded ports. For the street raisings, no recruitment campaigns, no ships full of laborers, no immigration surge to match the labor demand. The workers, like the dirt, simply don't exist in the record. Plot the timeline of these street raisings on a global map. Seattle, 1889 to 1907. Chicago, 1855 to 1900. London, 1860 to 1890. St. Petersburg, 1850 to 1880. Melbourne, 1860 to 1895. These cities had no coordinating body, no League of Nations, no United Nations, no international engineering consortium. Communication technology was primitive. Telegraph existed, but coordinating municipal projects across oceans, impossible. Yet they all independently decided to execute the same solution, to bury their entire ground floors, to raise streets by 10 to 15 feet, to spend fortunes on projects that generated almost no documentation within a 50-year window. The probability of independent convergence on such a specific solution to problems that aren't even clearly defined in the historical record approaches zero. It looks less like coincidence and more like coordination. City budgets of the period are extensively documented. We have line items for lamp oil, for street sweeper salaries, for cobblestone repair, down to the penny.
We live on top of a world. Not an ancient world, not Rome, not Babylon, not civilizations separated from us by millennia and myth. A recent world. A world of cathedral-height public halls, of ornate entryways carved by masters, of impossible craftsmanship that modern builders struggle to replicate. A world that was functional, populated, sophisticated, within living memory of our great-great-grandparents. And then it was buried. Not by slow geological process, not by gradual accumulation over centuries, but deliberately, systematically, globally, within a single generation, within the span of 50 years, within the age of photography and newspapers and municipal accountability. The questions that remain are simple. Who authorized this? No civic records document a decision of this magnitude. No mayor signed the order, no city council debated the cost, no governor approved the plan. What event made it necessary? No historical catastrophe in the 1850s through 1870s explains it. No flood that required razing entire cities. No plague that demanded burying the infected level. No war that justified such transformation. The official explanations, drainage, sanitation, modernization, collapse under the weight of their own logistics. The math doesn't work. The timelines don't align. The evidence doesn't support the story. Where did the population go? Census numbers don't account for a displacement event. No mass migration, no refugee crisis, no humanitarian disaster. And yet, the orphanages overflow. The asylums fill. The almshouses burst with displaced persons who can't or won't identify their origins. Children who arrive alone. Adults who claim no family. People who appear in cities with no documented arrival. Who speak the language but carry no papers. Who seem unmoored from their own past. Most troubling of all, why don't we remember? Cultural memory preserves trauma. We remember the Black Death across 7 centuries. We remember the Great Fire of London, the Chicago Fire, the San Francisco earthquake, events that killed hundreds, that destroyed neighborhoods, that lasted days or weeks. We remember them in minute detail. We build monuments, we teach them in schools, we mark anniversaries. But a project that reshaped every major city on Earth, that buried the ground floor of civilization itself, that required moving mountain ranges of Earth, that employed entire generations of workers. Silence. No monuments commemorate the great street raising. No holidays mark its completion. No grandparents told stories of when the old world was buried. No letters survive describing the work. No diaries record the transformation. It's as if it never happened. Or as if everyone who remembered agreed never to speak of it, or was made to forget. You can verify this yourself. Walk through any 19th century neighborhood in any city.
Find the buildings with basement windows at street level. Look for the tall ceilings underground. Notice the staircases that descend to reach what were clearly primary rooms. Ask yourself, would you build a palace basement? Would you carve marble archways just to bury them in earth? Would you install crystal chandeliers where only rats would see them? Would you paint frescoes on ceilings designed to be underground? Would you apply master craftsmanship, expensive materials, artistic vision to spaces meant to be seen, to be used, to be lived in, to be part of the world before someone decided they had to be erased? The theory points to a pattern of erasure that extends beyond architecture. Missing records from the critical decades, archival gaps that span 1840 to 1865 in city after city, fire damage, poor record keeping, lost in transit. The explanations vary, but the result is consistent. We cannot verify what happened because the documentation doesn't exist. Birth records, property deeds, city council minutes, newspaper archives, all degraded or missing from the exact period when these transformations supposedly occurred. The decades before, relatively complete. The decades after, meticulously preserved. Only the middle years, the years of transformation, are lost. We are a civilization with amnesia. We live in buildings we don't understand, on streets that defy their own engineering, atop a buried world that official history insists was always underground. We accept explanations that don't explain. We believe logistics that are impossible. We forget events that should be unforgettable. The mudflood theory asks us to consider a different possibility, that the ground didn't rise, that the streets weren't elevated through gradual improvement, that the basements aren't basements at all. What if everything else fell? What if the world we know was built on top of a world that was deliberately buried? What if the 19th century experienced a catastrophe so complete, so devastating, so incomprehensible, that the only solution was to bury the evidence, to start again, to build a new ground floor, to tell the survivors never to speak of what was lost? What if we are the descendants of people who agreed to forget? The door remains, 8 feet below the pavement in Bloomsbury, the threshold worn smooth by footsteps we're told never existed, the granite carved with rosettes that were meant to be seen, the proportions designed for a world we can no longer access. It sits in darkness now, buried, forgotten, a monument to a history we don't remember. But monuments don't lie. Architecture doesn't forget. The stones remember, even when we don't. The door is still there, waiting, in the darkness beneath our feet, waiting for someone to ask, why was it buried? And what else lies beneath?
When Mussolini ordered excavations for the Rome metro in the 1930s, workers found something unexpected. The ancient Roman street level sat only 15 to 20 feet below the modern surface. Expected, documented, part of the known archaeological record. But beneath that, structures from the Renaissance, from the medieval period, buried even deeper than the Romans. The archaeological timeline was inverted. Buildings constructed in the 1600s, in the 1700s, showed the same burial pattern as structures from antiquity. Time period didn't matter. Everything below a certain elevation had been consumed by earth. The excavation photographs show Renaissance doorways 25 feet underground, doorways designed for street-level access, with thresholds, with decorative surrounds, with every feature of a public entrance, but connected to no street in the historical record. The archaeologists filed reports, noted the anomaly, then moved on, because acknowledging the implication would require rewriting centuries of accepted history, would require asking, when did this happen, and why don't we remember? It's easier to excavate around a mystery than to excavate into it. The Moscow metro discoveries of the 1930s remain partially classified. Official reports mention unexpected structural complications, a bureaucratic phrase, vague, designed to satisfy curiosity without providing information. What it meant, workers found entire city blocks beneath central Moscow. The photographs that survived Stalinist censorship show multi-story structures with intact windows, with doors still hanging on hinges, finished interiors, not rough foundations, not archaeological ruins, finished. Street-level infrastructure exists 30 feet below the modern city. Gutters, curbs, paving stones laid in geometric patterns, the kind of municipal investment that signals permanence, pride, the intention to last. These elements appear in no city registry. No historical record acknowledges their construction. They simply exist, buried, forgotten. Most unsettling, the architectural style doesn't match ancient Moscow, doesn't match medieval construction. It matches the global 19th century pattern. Red brick, arched windows, the same impossible craftsmanship found in Seattle and London and Melbourne. The same buildings, the same details, thousands of miles apart, buried at the same depth. Seattle's underground has become tourist accessible, a curiosity, a historical footnote marketed as entertainment. The official story is clean, simple. The Great Fire of 1889 destroyed downtown. The city was rebuilt one story higher to improve drainage, to solve flooding problems, to modernize. But the physical evidence contradicts almost every element of this narrative. The rebuilt streets show no evidence of fire damage below the fill layer, no charring, no ash deposits, no melted glass or metal warped. The buried storefronts have inventory still on shelves, bottles arranged in rows, goods waiting for customers who never came. No fire evacuation, no salvage operation, just abandonment. The timeline claims this massive project took 2 to 3 years. Modern engineers have analyzed the scope, moving 12 million cubic yards of fill, rebuilding 90 city blocks, installing new infrastructure. Their estimate, 15 to 20 years with contemporary technology, with horse-drawn carts and manual labor. The math doesn't work. Photographs show the fill being added in some areas before the fire, not after, before. Streets being raised while businesses were still operating. Then the fire came, and the official story was written. The underground tour reveals something that creates profound unease. Fully intact commercial spaces, barbershops with mirrors still mounted on walls, hotels with furniture arranged in lobbies, banks with vault doors standing open. These weren't destroyed and rebuilt on top of. They were buried while functional, while complete, while someone still cared enough to arrange the furniture. It feels less like disaster recovery and more like preservation, as if someone wanted to seal a moment in time, to bury it, but not destroy it. Wherever modern construction digs deep enough, the pattern repeats. Edinburgh's vaults were officially slum housing, dangerous, abandoned by choice, but the architecture rivals the surface buildings, stone masonry of exceptional quality, vaulted ceilings, decorative elements that make no sense in a slum. The Paris catacombs incorporate structured buildings into the tunnel system, not rough caves, not natural formations, buildings, with walls, with rooms, with architectural integrity. They predate the official construction of the catacombs, exist in spaces that weren't supposed to be there. New York subway excavations generated consistent reports of unexpected foundations at depths that contradict city records. Workers would break through bedrock, expecting empty space, and find finished walls, floors, infrastructure that appears on no survey, no architectural plan. The reports were filed, noted, then buried in bureaucratic archives, because unexpected foundations raise questions that cities prefer not to answer. Depth analysis shows most buried structures sit between 10 and 30 feet below modern surface, too shallow to be ancient, too deep to be recent. They occupy a temporal space that doesn't fit the historical narrative. The burial happened in a specific window, roughly 1840 to 1900, 60 years, a single lifetime, within the age of photography, of newspapers, of municipal accountability. And yet, the documentation is sparse, incomplete, strangely uniform in the little it says. One researcher compiled excavation reports from 40 cities, looked for patterns in the language, in the depth measurements, in the architectural descriptions. What emerged was consistency. The same depth, the same building style,
the same bureaucratic vagueness about when and why, as if 40 cities, separated by oceans and continents, had consulted the same manual, had followed the same instructions, had buried the same world. The theory suggests we're looking at the evidence of a coordinated event, not gradual urban development, not independent municipal projects, but a single, global, deliberate act of burial. An act that required the complicity of governments, of newspapers, of historical societies, of everyone who might remember and chose not to speak, or was made to forget.